receive their monthly reports. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That's carried. We have no public forums or petitions today, but before we get on to the one deputation we've got, I don't know if you've seen the front page of Le Paper. Is that? Something we all knew anyway, but the little bit that I've highlighted and I'm having trouble to read, confidence in Christchurch City Council was at 38%, higher than the average of 30%, and more than the 29% it was in 2022. So this is good news for everyone. Yoo-hoo. Okie doke. Right, so now, deputation, 10 minutes. We've got Brodie Murrah Stevenson, Community Action on Youth and Drugs, regarding item 20. Now, we've got to be careful. Note this presentation and any questions from councillors should focus on the timeline, as there will be consultation and hearings process for feedback as in the content of the LAP. Hello.
Kia ora, sorry, this is my first one of these, so I'm a little nervous. My name's Brodie. I work for St John of God Hora Trust, but under the contract Community Action on Youth and Drugs, which is the national contract in 20 sites around the country, aiming at reducing and preventing drug and alcohol harm, especially when it affects youth. As a young person who grew up in this city not that long ago, I'm pretty aware of the negative effects of alcohol harm in our community. It's fairly inspiring to the mahi that I do, the effects I've seen both on whānau, friends, and the wider community. And also as a resident of New Brighton, I can see the harms of an underregulated liquor market on a daily basis. It's pretty much impossible to walk 100 metres away from my house and not see direct evidence of alcohol harm. The off licenses in my area are honestly run by decent people. It's the harm that comes with the current model of the sale and supply of liquor that creates innate harm. I don't think there's necessarily a lot of ill will. Industry often uses the personal responsibility argument, but at the same time uses an argument about market fairness. They're aware that there are practices that they could adopt which would have a positive impact on overall alcohol harm, but refuse to because their nervous competitors won't adopt the same practices. I spend a lot of my time in hearings with the DLC going over the same little variations to licenses on off licenses, having the same arguments over and over again with the same evidence, but it's a slog, and it's the same slog, and it's the same pushback because there's money to be made, and clearly, although they're spending a lot on lawyers, there's more money to be made than the money that they're spending on the lawyers. Sorry. The personal responsibility argument just doesn't really work when you've got a city the size of ours. The efforts that it would take to educate or socially engineer the kind of outcomes that you want around alcohol harm with a population our size that's a lot of work. Regulating the kind of handful of organisations, franchises that operate off licenses within Ōtautahi is a much simpler means of addressing the same problem. The last LAP was shut down by the appeals of a hospitality sector that was still recovering from the damage of the earthquakes, and while they're still pushing against local alcohol policies here and in other areas where they're being considered, the hospitality industry stands to benefit from an LAP not be negatively affected, in my opinion. An application for a new off-licence bottle store is currently with council to put a bottle-o right across the road from the bus exchange, which, the fact that it's even able to be applied for under the current regulations that we have around alcohol is ludicrous. that there's just so many areas of potential community harm in that space. My role is not just community action on youth and alcohol, it's community action on youth and drugs, but as I'm saying, a huge amount of my time is spent addressing alcohol harm, and that's because it is just the biggest behemoth of an issue that we have in the city. And I would love if there was regulation that meant that I could address some of the other issues that are going on in my role, rather than, just repeatedly doing the same stuff. Across the board, it almost appears that there's consensus that there needs to be an LAP to lift the floor, standardised conditions. Industry wants standardised conditions as well, even if they push back against it. Provide regulatory certainty and reduce harm. To delay the process of this policy is kind of an argument to just delay making a decision rather than actually and a decision to continue to allow harm to continue while the LAP is put on hold. I am very grateful to all of you sitting here who want to address alcohol harm in the community. I'm sure you all see it and have been affected by it at some point. I think it's hard to live in this country and in this city especially, and not have been affected in some way or another by alcohol harm, whether it's you individually or your whānau or young people in your community that you represent. It's everywhere, it's massive, and this policy progressing is a sincere means of addressing some of those concerns. And again, you're not deciding on the content of the LAP, you're deciding to give the public a say, and so that you can decide on measures to reduce harm, which best fits the evidence and best fits the community that you represent here in this room. And I just want to repeat the recommendations of the staff from the LAP report, that the council confirms its intent to consider adoption of the final version of a local alcohol policy before the local elections in October 25, and request staff to progress work accordingly and resolve that all decision making on matters related to local alcohol policy sit with the full council with the mayor as chair. I'm going to stop there, but time for questions if anyone's got questions about my stance on it.
Have Timothy, please.
Thank you, and thank you very much. You've done very well for your first time, so hopefully it won't be your last. Is your organisation aware of the weaknesses in legislation? So, for instance, one can operate in Christchurch but have it online, which is kind of out of the scope, but it's really important when it comes to the weaknesses in legislation over this. So, but you can hold a liquor licence anywhere in New Zealand, so it could be North Cape, could be Bluff, whatever, but operate in Christchurch. What's your organisation's, for online, what's your organisation's thoughts on that?
I'm aware, well, again, not my organisation necessarily, but the contract that I'm on that's held nationally operate at both the grassroots level, this sort of level, lobbying to community boards and to councils and to regional councils to address harm, but also operate at higher levels trying to address harm at the legislative level. Again, I mean, that's... It's clearly an issue. It's an issue that none of us in this room have any control over, unfortunately.
Well, kind of we do, because we can all lobby central
government. And we should.
Every rule we have is
the fact that
Wellington.
you can log into a liquor store local to you's website and order alcohol, and you're not ordering from that liquor store, you're ordering from a license held somewhere else in the country that's under different. Yeah. It's not great. Yeah.
Thank you.
All good.
Celeste, please. About it.
Well done. I know
Thank
it's
you.
not easy being in your seat, and it is tough, but you did a great job. So I'm aware that Waipuna in the community action on youth and drugs is based. They work with a lot of young families and particularly men that have been through the justice system.
Yeah, we have a lot of reintegration programs and things running through our.
Yeah. So, in your view, is alcohol a factor in their lives? And if so, what kinds of licenses are a source of the most harm?
I think you'd struggle to find many people who haven't been through the system in the same way that those boys have, that haven't either had direct alcohol harm in terms of alcoholism themselves, or alcohol abuse at a young age themselves, or parental alcohol abuse leading to domestic violence or other forms of abuse in their home. Alcohol is a massive factor on almost everyone who comes through our door, whether it's direct or indirect. Sorry, what was the second half of your question?
And that was in relation to what type of licenses do you think are the source of a lot of that harm?
The licenses that are largely on licenses in a controlled area under the stewardship of hopefully well-trained duty managers and staff. From my both experience and knowledge, off licenses don't have the same duty of care to the people that they serve alcohol to. They are often located in areas that are, well, I mean, statistically they're not located in low socioeconomic areas, but that's they operate heavily. They make a lot of money in areas that are low socioeconomic areas, which is vastly different to the kind of income flows in on licenses. I'm far more concerned about off licenses, especially when you have a large cluster in proximity to small suburban retail areas and things like that.
Thank you, Brady.
Sorry.
You're gobbling up time flat out. But you put your point across, and thank you very much for coming in. It's good.
Legend, thank you.
Okie dokie. So, well, now I'll move it. I'm going to step out on a limb here and try and do all of these minutes 5, 6, 7, 28, 8, 9.